We'll start with introductions. So if you're just seeing my face for the first time, my name is Ibukun. I'm the founder of Come Tech With Us, which is a community where we help and support people to build careers so that they can live the lives that they truly want to live. So we provide content around career development, career growth, just the whole 9 yards, just as much as we can, just in terms of helping people grow their careers. And today I have with me Ibrahim from Black Recruiters Network. And as we said, finally, like I'm really excited that this is happening, to be honest, because we've been talking about it for a while. And I met, I think it was your co-founder, Arsima,
Yeah.
at Black Tech Fest in London last year.
hmm
And when I met her, I followed your page, I followed the content. I was like, oh, okay, like this is definitely a great like collaboration that could happen, right? Just seeing, what you guys are doing in terms of the events, getting people, working with Black people, increasing
For
representation in tech.
sure.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, happy to have you here. I'll hand over to Ibrahim to do quick introductions and we'll get into the agenda for
Yeah,
today.
for sure. Happy to be here. Thank you for the intro and the background on how we connected. I'm the co-founder. My name's Ibrahim. I'm the co-founder of the Black Recruiters Network. We're essentially a community of Black talent acquisition, um, recruitment, people experience, HR type folk, working predominantly within the recruitment industry. We essentially created a community for us to, I guess, have visibility of one another, to be able to support, promote Black excellence, of course, increase Black representation in tech, but overall, um, have a diversity-led focus in terms of technology, but also other industries as well. Um, since 2021, when we started, we've been doing that and helping different communities similar to come tech with us in terms of helping them to understand how to navigate the tech space, specifically, as a Black professional. But outside of that, we're continuing to grow, show our faces at events, network, and continuing to, be parts of, networking opportunities and upskilling opportunities like this.
All right, amazing. So yeah, thanks for the introduction. So
No
I mean,
problem.
like it's very on par with the discussion that we have today, which is essentially navigating the job market. As in the tech market is crazy these days. So I'm eager to get into it and also get like your insider secrets as someone who is helping people go from outside of tech into tech, or even just like navigating the tech industry generally. And we're also going to
hmm
be talking about remote opportunities and international opportunities, because a lot of our audience is based in Nigeria,
Okay.
and I know that a lot of young people these days are looking to either get remote opportunities or move out of the country. So that would be interesting to get your thoughts on. So
hmm
yeah, we'll get into it. So I think
Sure.
my first question is like, what's happening these days, right? I've been like a I'm like a first-hand witness, or like a
hmm
first-hand I don't even know of the job market this year, because I also just like recently moved countries and switched jobs.
Yeah.
And when I was reflecting on my experience, I did the same thing in 2022.
Yeah.
I moved from Nigeria to the UK and I was looking for work, and I remember that I had so many interviews, like it was crazy. I had to like
Yeah.
have my own personal job board of like, okay, I've interviewed with this person, I've spoken to
Yeah.
people, and I was getting like all these like really quality companies that I was speaking to. And then
Yeah.
in 2023 to 2024, it was different.
It
Like,
was completely different.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I mean, I know a lot has been happening in the tech industry, but from your own perspective, like what is really different
Mm.
and unique about, where we are now with regards to like the job industry?
What I would say is that 2022 for a lot of people, including like talent acquisition professionals and recruiters, was like what a time to be alive. Coming out of, I guess, the pandemic,
Yeah.
and then 2021, there was a boom in terms of job opportunities and I guess an injection of cash. It's
Mm.
for lots of different startups. Startups were like scaling in hyper growth, moving from. I worked with companies that were growing from like 80 people to 700
Mhm.
people within like 18 months. That was essentially overkill in terms of what was necessary for the industry. And I think um, the economy took a turn and took a hit, and as we saw, there was like mass layoffs from huge companies and a lot of, I guess, economic instability, which has caused the job market to change,
Mm,
and to kind of revert back to a space where companies are being very, very careful in terms of how they're scaling, but also the talent that they're choosing for their teams to be able to scale. Also, I don't know if it's a trend, but I believe that it is coming out of 2020 and 2021 in terms of the events that impacted BRN to start in terms of George Floyd and the focus on, Black
mm,
representation and diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of those budgets have been dropped by companies as well. So
yeah.
the rush to kind of diversify teams,
Mm,
whether that's internationally or homegrown talent, has kind of subsided as well. So that's had an impact on things.
mm,
So coupled together, it's had a huge change on the job market for overall talent and people everywhere, of course, but in terms of Black talent looking to find remote um, um, work opportunities,
yeah.
it becomes difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, that I mean that's really disappointing to hear. I mean I've been lucky to be part of organizations where diversity and inclusion is still a big thing,
Yeah.
but I imagine that now that like it's no longer a trend to like support
Mm,
like Black
yeah.
talent or to support diverse
Yeah.
talent, then those people who just did it for the sake of the trend, are pulling back now in
Yeah.
terms of doing that. I think my question would be like, what does that mean for like the average person then who is looking for work? Like, what should they be thinking about or like doing
Yeah.
to sort of like overcome this challenge?
They should be thinking about, I would say, and just to touch on the diversity, there are still companies out there who are, being quite intentional about diversity, equity, inclusion, and want to hire diverse teams across the board
Mm-hmm.
of what I guess underrepresented people look like and the communities that they come from. So there is that still there. I think that it was along with like talent, and maybe engineering, those are and like DEI, those are the easiest places to make cuts for
Mm,
businesses. So I think that was the first point of call. But in terms of job seekers at this time, anticipating the type of trends that they want to go into and that are booming and that are on the rise quite quickly, and honing in and focusing on those industries are really important.
yeah.
So of course, like artificial intelligence and machine learning is essentially the future of various sectors, and it's going to fuel demand across technology for a very, very long time.
Mm,
Um, and then we also have cybersecurity, because with artificial intelligence and machine learning and robotics comes how do we secure these, I
yeah.
guess, yeah, how do we secure these machines essentially, and how
Yeah.
do we protect our data? Then going on
Mm-hmm.
to data, data's are now a commodity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another industry, data analytics is another industry to really focus on. Blockchain technology is also within the financial services and supply chain industries are really cool as well. And
Yeah.
then also, you know, like good tech for good. I don't know if it's still called tech for good now for its change. So health tech companies, sustainability
Mm,
companies, um, that's a real great area to focus on if it's mission led,
yeah.
and creating opportunities for engineers, consultants that may have even transitioned from, I guess, transitioned from maybe an environmental background going into a tech focused role, could also be good. Could also be a good industry for them to focus on. So I think it's being quite intentional and specific about the industries that
Mm-hmm.
you're aiming for, and the skills needed is to penetrate those essentially.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. I think we had in our last workshop, like one of the things that our guest at the time said was read the news, like see what's happening, see where the world is moving, and then see how you can sort of,
It's true.
adapt. And that's what I'm hearing you say, because obviously everyone is talking about AI,
Hmm.
machine learning, security is a big thing because of all of these things that are on the rise. So
Yeah.
just looking at those industries that could potentially be, sort of driving humanity towards the
Yeah.
future,
Yeah. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a great time to, maybe think about pivoting to those industries.
Yeah.
I think the good thing I'm hearing there as well is like you might already be in tech, but maybe you will even want to just be considering, okay, what companies should I be working with?
For
And,
sure.
actually targeting those types of companies. And then if you're coming into tech, then you're also looking at what are the skills that are in demand and how can I learn those skills? And I think that sort of
Exactly.
like takes me to my next question, right? Because a lot of people sort of see tech and like, is this like fancy and shiny thing that everyone wants to do? I mean,
Yeah.
which is great because like there are, really good benefits, right? But the truth is like,
Mhm.
it's also a very intensive environment. It's
Mhm.
usually very high paced. There's always like demand on like continuous learning and growth. How do people sort of like say, I'm coming from a non-tech background to a tech background or to
Yeah.
like a tech, role, and like these
Yeah.
are the skills that are needed? How do I start to like streamline that and like plan my path into like these
Yeah.
high demand skills?
Yeah. Yeah, I think first of all, when people want to enter into tech, I think sometimes the first initial inclination is that you have to have a technical role, and I'm sure that you're very aware, Booking, that you don't
Yeah.
necessarily. There are layers and verticals of roles, of hugely transferable skills that are non-technical. So I'll
Hmm.
first decide then whether or not, if you do want to go into a technical role, how steep is the learning curve in a very competitive market.
Hmm.
And then in terms of that, what current skills that you have that can be transferable into non-technical roles within the tech industry, which
Yeah.
also can be very valuable, and gives you the same benefits of working within the tech industry,
Mhm.
working within a tech company. But also gives you that mobility. So once you're in maybe in a non-technical position, if you want to pivot into a technical position,
It's
you always
easier.
have like a core competency of working within that environment, because the tech environment, especially within like an early stage or a series A to B to C startup, it is very fast paced. There is lots of like digital skills that you need and nuances that you need to be able to understand, especially in a remote working environment in terms of asynchronous
Hmm.
communication, and being able to work collaboratively across that.
Yeah.
Um, that's really kind of picking your path specifically. Do I want to be technical within the tech market? What's the learning curve in that? What do I have to do? Do I want to be non-technical? What type of roles? What's available to me? What skills do I have
Yeah.
that I can focus on and hone in on?
Okay. Yeah. Before we go on, I realized that I forgot to mention this. At the end of the session, we're going to take questions. So you should be able to see like a speech bubble with a question mark. Please leave your questions using that. Please leave your questions using that feature so that we're able to pay attention to the questions and not get distracted by that.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Thanks for that. Right. So I really like that you mentioned that, obviously there's no, how do I say it? So like there's no one way to get into tech, right? And tech
Yeah.
is an ecosystem of skills that we need. Like, yes, we have engineers, but like, and
Yeah.
yes, like most tech companies have like, bigger engineering teams, but there's so many other skills that, make
Yeah.
world of tech go round, right?
Yeah.
So being able to sort of like say, craft your path, like think about the skills that you
Yeah.
already have, and then what the way forward would be into tech. I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And I think you also touched on something that's really important in terms of like there are skills that transcend any role, like
Hmm.
being able to like communicate effectively, being
Hmm.
able to work like asynchronously. Like those are things that
Yeah.
are even more important now that companies are working remotely, working hybrid,
Yeah.
right? So regardless of your role, you should also be paying attention to like the in demand, I guess, non
Soft
technical,
skills.
like yeah,
Soft
soft
skills.
skills,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's really great.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, I guess we talked a bit about that, which is just like, asynchronous working,
Yeah.
communication. What other soft skills do you think that people should be sort of like thinking about? And maybe also like digital skills as well,
Yeah.
in terms of, working in tech.
Yeah, so like tech overall is an ecosystem that's I guess developing every day. Problem solving and innovation is one problem that every tech company has and wants to solve. How can we innovate? How can we optimize? How can we use data? How can we be more data literate and use data to make informed decisions? How can we optimize our processes? How can we solve complex problems? So I think having a good acumen for problem
Mm,
solving and creative thinking and innovation is really important, and it's a digital skill, and how you can digitalize that is really important.
yeah.
Um, Continuous learning, so staying up to date with new technologies. It doesn't necessarily have to be from an engineering point. It could be an evolving tech landscape. So as a talent professional, there's a whole new evolving landscape of a tech stack that you will have
Mm.
as a talent professional now, where before it was kind of like very manual and
Yeah.
very manual and very focused on your network. And now it's kind of, how do you use technology to leverage your network further? How can you use automated tools
Hmm.
to work for you while you're doing something completely different?
Yeah.
Um, and so it's really kind of getting up to scratch in terms of what technologies businesses are now using, either to communicate, either to collaborate, either to innovate, even to integrate their tool sets. That's a
Yeah.
really important way to do so.
Yeah.
Yeah, in terms
Yeah.
of digital skills. Yeah,
Yeah. I think that that's really important because I know like a lot of people sort of like see AI and like, oh, AI is going to come for our job. But I feel like the person who knows how to use AI is the person who is going to like take your job, not necessarily like the AI as a technology.
as a technology.
You
Yeah,
really need to like be thinking about like how can I improve my outputs, using these technologies that are available. And
yeah,
like honestly, it's almost like there's really no excuse because like a lot of these tools, I always like tell my friends as well, like who are non-technical, that like these tools are created for people like you who are non-technical. Like
yeah,
don't be intimidated by them. They're not building these things just for engineers. They're building it to
yeah.
like almost like democratize like the automation and like the technology space.
Mm.
So it's the perfect time for you to be adopting these tools in your daily work, right? So I think that,
It's a,
that's great.
it's a,
That sort of like takes me to like the next thing, right? Because there's a lot of like I guess there's a trend now about like building your personal brand and like networking and stuff, which I mean,
yeah,
yeah, like there's some value there, but aside from like the fluff, like especially when we talk about remote jobs and like international
yeah,
opportunities, like
yeah,
what is really the role of your persona or your personal brand,
yeah.
to be able to like attract those types of opportunities.
Yeah, this is a tricky one actually, because this is something that I'm still working on, even as like a talent professional. Personal branding is really important. Networking is huge. Um, but in essence, now it's really important, especially for those people who have built their personal brand around just simply, thought leadership on a specific area. But it is huge in terms of the type of personas that you want to build, whether it's a person. So the personas that I have, or that I have in mind, so to speak, that I need to actually implement, because it is a step in the right direction when you're trying to build a personal brand in a professional sense.
Mm,
It can be easier from a more social point of view.
yeah.
But I have one that is myself, Ibrahim, who is a father, who's a boxing enthusiast, who likes to do things with friends. And then I have Ibrahim, who is the talent professional, who cares about
Mm,
diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then I have
yeah.
also Ibrahim, who's the co-founder of the Black Recruiters Network. So it's kind of encompassing all those things together, and
Mm,
creating a persona that you can nurture in your professional network. And it is about
mhm,
consistency
mhm.
with doing that. And sometimes it's not about how many likes that you get or how many reposts. It's about being consistent and having a strong personal brand, a strong message.
Yeah,
What is your why? What is the areas that you're interested in, and why are you speaking about them?
yeah.
And being consistent with that. And networking is what I learned actually on a recent call that I had with one of the Black Recruiters Network's partners, was just like not being afraid to hear no,
Mhm.
and like not being able to like knock on doors, connect with people, ask for conversations, um, and just to learn. So even as launching my own brand, Growth Seed, it was just having conversations with people who were more experienced than me, who had been there before, who had gone on this beaten path, and just to kind of get information, let them see your face on a virtual, or even
Mm,
grab a coffee with them if you're able to,
yeah,
and build a form of relationship without asking for anything, but trying to give more than you're trying to take. And
yeah.
that's the networking side of things. And that also becomes your personal brand
Mm,
as a person that you can reach out to, and that can reach out to you. And that if you don't have
mhm.
anything direct for them, you can say, okay, well, I know this person, you seem similar, talk to them,
Yeah,
and you never know what can happen. And that's the power of networking, so to
yeah,
speak.
yeah, yeah, 100%. I think for me as well, like when you think about personal branding, I think it's always like it's easier like when you're further along in your career because like
Mm,
you form your thoughts around like what people should be doing, how the industry should be moving, but like early in your career, like your personal brand could easily be this person who is like on this journey to becoming a thought leader,
Become,
right?
yeah,
You
it's
share
true.
what you're learning,
Mm,
you share what your experiences are, you ask questions, like put that out there,
yeah,
and just like engaging with people and genuinely making those connections that you're talking about, right? Because
yeah,
to like fine, you might not need something today, but you never know, where that connection would come in the future.
yeah,
And sometimes it's also like you're not even just necessarily like getting from them. Maybe you are the connection that they need as
yes,
well, which
yeah,
is a
yeah,
good
for
way
sure.
like to think about the impact of your career, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, I would definitely I agree with you. Like there's no harm in, getting a no. And
Hmm.
weirdly, like what I found is that like most people are actually inclined to say yes.
Yeah,
Like
most people are inclined to say yes. Most people are inclined
yeah.
to give you their time. Most people are inclined to understand where you're coming from. Most people are inclined to want to hear about your story. And sometimes, even if you are posting, even if you are sharing, it doesn't matter about your experience level, so to speak, as long as there's an authenticity about it. Um,
Yeah.
that's the most important thing. And then being consistent with that and helping
Mm,
people to kind of become part of your journey. Um,
yeah.
and I think it's the consistency part that I would take away from my own advice. Is be consistent, like have
Yeah.
like understand what channels that you want to engage with people on and what channels make sense for the industry that you're trying to tap into or trying to
Mm,
engage with.
yeah.
Um, and then be consistent on that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the way you framed it, just like take people along with you on your journey. So like
Yeah.
whether you're at the beginning of your career, mid-career, or like, you're already pretty established, the most important thing is that you're taking people along with you on that, right?
Yeah.
So I love that. And I think the other thing that you also mentioned that I really love to hear was you don't also have to like show up as just like this robotic person who has all these ideas. Like,
Hmm.
you mentioned being a father, like boxing enthusiast. Like, I think that those are the things that, if
Yeah.
crafted well, would probably help people like relate to you.
Yeah.
Where it's not like, oh, like this person is just like at a level that I'll never
Yeah.
attain, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like you're actually presenting yourself as I'm this whole person just like
Yeah.
everybody else, but like
Yeah.
this is what I'm learning and this is where I'm going.
Yeah. You have to be human because we are all human essentially. And in the growing digital and virtual world, you can take away like
Mm,
I guess not only a people centric, but like a human centric approach to things, and we can kind of become a bit robotic and a bit like transactional.
mm-hmm.
So I think letting, especially in professional, um, yeah, in professional fields, sometimes it's like, can I share about who I am as a human being? How can I
Yeah,
share about my life when I kind of switch off? But what happens is, especially within remote work, your life, your day-to-day life is not integrated in with
with
work.
work.
So,
Yeah,
you may be working and you have your children with you or around, they're around the house or whichever it might be. So these are like real life things that happen. So we shouldn't kind of separate them in terms of building a
yeah,
personal brand. It
mm-hmm.
should be part of who you are as a person because
Yeah,
it's why you do things. It's your motivations,
yeah,
that human side. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think that that's something that I can definitely learn because I feel very anxious to like mix. I mean, like if my kid runs around in a meeting or whatever, like I'm not too worried, but it's
Yeah.
almost like we have this thing on my team where we share life updates. And I recently
Mm.
like had my anniversary and it took me like days. I was like, oh, am I going to share that? But
Happy
I was like,
anniversary.
I mean, I'm the lead of my team and I want my team to share with me. So like, why am I being so rigid
Yeah.
about it? Besides, like, you're married, you are going to have an anniversary. Like,
Yeah.
it's
It
not like
happens.
you're not
It
due.
happens annually, by the way, as well. So
Exactly. So yeah, like I just like that's I think that's something that I'm personally going to just like take away, just not shying away from that human side of things.
yeah,
Because I've really been thinking, even just with Comtech with us, about like why should people really care about like building a career, right? I mean, it's just another aspect of your life.
yeah,
But I've been realizing that like this is really the gateway for most people to really build the lives that they want and like to really live
yeah,
out their dreams. And like if just like being a bit more intentional about your career is going to like unlock so many other opportunities for you outside of work,
yeah,
then that is the why for for
yeah,
me, to be sharing all of this content,
yeah,
right? And I know your team as well, has the why for like wanting to have like more black representation in tech. Like it's not just for the sake of it, it's not just for the numbers, but
yes.
these are like real lives and real people that are being impacted.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
I'm sure for you in your career, like you have these ideals where it's like, oh, I'm really particular about this specific thing because, this is the impact on the next person.
Yeah,
Being able to like
sure.
inject that into like your personal brand journey, I would say. I
Hmm.
don't really like those words, but like it's what it is, right? Your personal
It is
brand
what it is,
journey,
yeah.
I think, is really key. Yeah, I think the that would sort of like take me to now, like, okay, we have done some good networking, we have like a good personal brand.
Hmm.
What other things should we be thinking about in terms of just like actually getting those like remote or international opportunities?
Yeah. So remote or international opportunities, they're quite industry specific in terms of global remote international opportunities. So you'll find companies that are um like 100% remote or hybrid remote.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, if you're for the Come Tech With Us community who predominantly based in Nigeria, you'll probably either be looking for homegrown remote opportunities, hybrid opportunities, or those that are global.
Mm-hmm.
From my experience, I've seen that the most global 100% remote working opportunities are in the B2B SaaS
Okay.
SaaS industry.
Yeah.
Lots of companies who are, I guess, product led, product focused, looking to hire global teams because their particular product can serve different businesses globally.
Yeah.
So the verticals are broke down into specific regions, whether it's North America, EMEA, the APAC,
Yeah.
and then specifically even though Africa comes onto EMEA, sometimes it's specific to Africa as well. So they
Mm,
need teams to be able to understand the nuances of different regions. So that's a way to go about it.
mm,
Effectively navigating is you can use companies such as Remote or Deal. They'll have like lists of companies that they work
mm,
with. So those are companies that like um, host companies that are 100% remote,
yeah.
and being able to kind of stay on the pulse of these businesses that are growing from an early stage as well. So I think
Mm-hmm.
getting in on the ground floor for some companies that are coming through is really important.
Yeah.
But also understanding the working environments because remote working sounds cool sometimes, but you have to kind of have the skill sets to be able to work in a remote working environment. It might not be suited to
Yeah.
you at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is um, type of role where you sit down, you're in your own home, you wake up, you might go to a co-working space, but you do have to be a self-starter, so to speak. And even as a recruiter, I don't like that word, but like to have self-direction and strategy to be able to work off your own steam.
Yeah.
There's not always going to be someone there that you can always
Oh,
bounce an idea
yeah.
off. So even if you do bounce an idea of someone asynchronously via whatever communication channel that you're using for
Mm,
that business, that may not, you might need to do that quickly yourself, but that answer might come in an hour or 2 hours. That person's not sat next to you. You can't
mm.
fold up a piece of paper and throw it at them and say, "Hey, I need your
Yeah. What
attention."
you
Yeah, so I think it's kind of understanding the skills that are needed to be able to thrive in those environments,
Yeah.
understanding what those environments are like. I've
Mm-hmm.
been working remotely um, since 2021. And I'd say that I'll still be happy to work remotely, but I'm also open to a hybrid role now because
Yeah.
it's kind of understanding you want also like human interaction. So it's really understanding the environments that you're going into. Um,
Yeah.
Other than that, it's really assessing the businesses and their remote working culture
Yeah.
because some remote working cultures are great,
Mm,
truly flexible, but also from a company that might be at an early stage, it might be really autonomous, really flexible.
yeah.
There's not much processes in place, and you may flourish at that stage. So that might be your bag. It might be your thing. I work for companies from a seed stage to Series A because
Yeah.
that's how I like to navigate. When it gets a bit more process led to B,
Yeah.
C, I might
Yeah.
want to go somewhere else because that's not necessarily how I like to work. So it's really
Yeah.
understanding the environments that you thrive in
Mm-hmm.
specifically, and then the value that you can add. So then you can continue to kind of have agency in the decisions that you make about your career.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like I think you've dropped so many gems, but I think two things that I want to to pull out are like looking at companies who actually, so I know deal and remote, like you said, basically
Mm,
supports companies who
correct. Yeah.
have staff all over the world, right?
Hmm.
And I'm very sure like if you went on those websites, like they probably have a job board as
Hmm.
well for companies who are recruiting. So
Yeah.
like even we shared like a list of I guess each country has like a list of certified companies that can bring people into a country or that can
Mm,
hire remotely. So looking at those specific job boards, I think would be very key. So getting to follow the people who are supporting the remote companies, right?
for sure.
And then you also talked about like the types of companies, so like B2B SaaS companies, startups.
Hmm.
Honestly, like I feel like working at a startup, especially early in your career, is like the key. Because I worked at a startup as well early in my career, and I feel like that made a huge difference. So don't be afraid to like get into those types of roles as well.
Yeah.
One, because it gives you like a lot of flexibility to actually see, oh, is this something that I like? Is there potentially another path for me? It's much easier to like even change roles versus like when
Yeah.
you get into a company that's like really structured or like really process driven,
Yeah.
like you said. And it's also
Yeah.
like an opportunity for you to like see something from the start and like build it up to a place
Yeah.
where you have like so many years of experience within like the one or
Yeah.
two years that you've been working with them. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think that those are,
I
are,
thought
are really great pointers.
I'll tell you what, in terms of the remote working, it is really like I wouldn't say a full-time job, but you really kind of have to invest in kind of keeping your finger on the pulse in terms of where remote opportunities are coming from, what job boards are showcasing the best global opportunities, so to speak, as well. And engaging with either people who are individual contributors from that company. So if you see a company
Mm,
and they may not have any job roles. They may have a talent pool that you can submit your candidacy to beforehand. You may want to connect with people who actually work within the
mm,
business from an
mm.
individual contributor point of view or from a management point of view for future reference. So you can
Yeah,
build lists of companies that you know that hire remotely, that hire globally,
yeah,
um, and that are 100% remote or part remote,
yeah,
whichever it might be. And then you can build a list. One thing that I realize is that you have to be very intentional about your career. For me, I used to be a person where like I did my job and then when my job
yeah.
finished, that was it. But now I'm at a stage where it's a constant conversation. It's an interest now. My career is an interest. The
Yeah,
field of my career is an interest. So it has to kind of surpass just kind of something that you do in the day and
right.
has to be
Yeah,
something that you do consistently that you're interested in.
yeah.
Similarly to now, this past, I guess, work. I mean, for me it is. What time is it in Canada?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Okay. So I think for the community in Nigeria, it's about the same time. So
Yeah,
it's similar times. It's kind of coming to events such as this and investing in your career. And if you can go to
yeah,
local networking events and find out who's hiring, and I think that's really important as well. So being invested in what you're doing is important.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. Like even just like thinking about connecting with the ICs for a particular company,
Yeah.
I think that that's a really good way. I think the challenge that people, usually face is they say, oh, like I'm looking for a remote opportunity or like an international opportunity, and then they just go and like spray apply to like several roles without really, confirming,
Mm.
does this company sponsor
Yeah.
relocations? Does the
Yeah.
company hire globally? Because like people
Yeah.
say, oh, we are looking for someone that is like in America or like that is remote, and then they'll put in brackets like America.
America.
They're
Yeah.
not hiring outside of America. Like you have to be in America
Yeah.
to be remote, right? Like you can be
Yeah.
remote just in America. So like
Yeah.
even just like these tiny details and actually being able to like engage with someone in the company and ask them, does your company hire like outside of the
Yeah.
company that the country that they're based in,
Yeah.
or do they hire and like sponsor relocations? Like those like details are really important,
Hmm.
because what tends to happen is people like rack up so many rejections, and it's like it starts to like take a hit on their confidence, whereas like
Mm.
you're just applying to the wrong roles, you're not connecting with the right
Correct.
people. Those are like really easy things that you can do to save yourself even a lot of time, like that
Yeah.
you're spending applying to those roles. So like especially when you're thinking about international roles or
Yeah.
like remote roles, you
Mm.
really have to be very particular about what you're applying to. Like you need to make sure
Yeah.
that the company supports your journey, and the easiest
Yeah.
way to do that, confirm from people who already
You
work
already
there,
work there,
right?
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you also talked about like events and like networking. I think honestly, it's a Friday, it's Friday evening. If you're on this
Hmm.
call, obviously you're invested in your career,
Mm.
or like you're invested in, what the future holds for you. So that's a really good sign. But as you said, it sort of goes beyond 9 to 5. Like you're thinking beyond, okay, I've done all this work today, but what does that really mean for my future?
Yeah, for sure.
Is again like having the why as to like, why are you even doing all of this in the
Hmm.
first place?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and I think I want you to touch on, what you said as well, just about like really paying attention to the remote culture, because as you
yeah,
said, like some companies might be really flexible, and yes, like you have the time of your life working remotely, but there
yeah,
are other companies where like you're 100% like micromanaged because
yeah.
it's a remote environment.
Hmm.
How do people sort of like differentiate between those two things and like actually
Yeah,
see, what could potentially work for them?
yeah. I think it's really taking your time, going back to your point in terms of taking your time and not kind of spraying with applications, and being quite selective in the type of companies that you want to work for. Um, Checking out a company's values, and understanding what they stand for as well. Of course, there most companies that you go on, of course, there's never really like negative on their blogs. Of course, it's the company website, but going to kind of learn about people's experiences and how their days are set up, through company blogs and I forget the word for it now. Articles that are done by employees, but also
Yeah.
checking their Glassdoor, their Trustpilot rating, whatever it might be in terms of their product. Just understanding a bit about the company, understanding a bit about the founders and the leaders in that, looking at especially for the Black professionals, looking at what does leadership look like, literally.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
and you know what I mean, looking at their LinkedIn pages and understanding, and that might be further when you're in an interview process, but just in general, before you click apply, is this somewhere that I'm going to want to work? Is it diverse?
Yeah.
Is it equitable? Is it inclusive? What's their stance on that, for instance? Can I find that on their webpage?
Yeah.
Because there is a remote working culture, that you have to think about when it comes to your psychological safety,
Mm-hmm.
and going into environments, that are new, and
Mm-hmm.
that you may have not have been that you may have not have been in before. So I think
Yeah.
that's the most important part, and taking your time and really assessing the roles that you're applying for. Less is
Yeah.
more. I think on the job seeker point of view, it can feel like the more you put into the funnel, the more opportunity you're going to get.
Oh,
But
yeah.
sometimes I think it's more about taking your time, picking the right role that matches your skills, tailoring your CV, writing a great cover letter,
Yeah.
connecting with the hiring manager or an individual contributor or the talent person,
Yeah.
sending a compelling message. So helping yourself to stand out from the trawls of people who are just pressing apply, apply, apply,
Yeah.
because you can just become one person in that,
Yeah.
from a talent perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of helping yourself to stand out from the rest is the best
Yeah.
way to
Yeah.
go in.
Yeah. 100%. I agree. I think that um people like, and I'm a victim of like I've done this before, right? Especially when I started like looking for my most recent role, I was just
Hmm.
like, I mean, in the past, like you just apply and then you get callbacks, but especially now
Hmm.
with the way job market is, like one, you don't even want to waste your time, but like two, you want to make sure that you end up somewhere that you can see yourself,
Yeah,
hopefully like long term enough for you to achieve the goals that you're setting, going into that role,
yeah,
because like you
yeah,
don't want to be like in a job and then out of a job like so quickly,
yeah,
especially with the landscape that we're in. You really need to be intentional about, okay, is this company somewhere that I can see myself for, even at the very least like a
yeah,
year,
yeah,
right? While I'm working towards my career
yeah,
goals, and really paying attention to things like, leadership, like you said, diversity, talking to people who have worked there.
yeah,
I think those are things that, even I think what you're saying, and when you say like you should be further along in the interview process, I think even sometimes like at least just before you meet with the recruiter, because those are also like, knowing those things are things that could also help you stand out to eventually
for
land the
sure.
role,
Hmm.
right? So all of that research like you should be doing before you even say, okay, like this company is worthy of my time, because
Yes.
again, you're exchanging your time for money. It's not like
Hmm.
you're just there to like ask them for an opportunity. Like
Yeah, yeah.
you're actually giving them
It's a rate of
value, which is
exchange.
why they're giving you audience in the first
Hmm.
place. um I think we can talk a bit about like also in terms of sort of like keeping up with the with the market and keeping up with the industry, especially with tech that's moving so quickly,
Yeah.
what should employees now sort of be doing to get themselves like ready? So
Yeah.
in the event that you were to start looking for a job,
Yeah.
what should you be doing to sort of keep yourself up to date with, what the industry is looking for?
Um, what should you be doing? I think other than keeping your finger on the pulse on what each individual industry is doing, or the industry that you have an interest in, is really having a focus on your own development and career growth and what that looks
Mm-hmm.
like. So what skills, so even from your last job role to moving on next, what skills is it that you have and what ones do you want to attain? And that you want to kind
Yeah.
of get from that particular position? How do you kind of get a head start on that?
Mm-hmm.
How do you leverage your network and your community to be able to speak to individuals who harness those skill sets, who can point you in the right direction? I think being very intentional about improving skills, especially from a technical point of view, is having the ability to be able to showcase them. So if from the engineering side, it is building a portfolio of projects that you have done in your own spare time.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe also investing in passion projects that are focused around your career also as well,
Yeah.
and trying out new technologies that might be the way. So it is really kind of either looking back and looking at the industry and saying, are the technologies that I'm using out of date? Do I need to upskill? Do I need to learn more?
Yeah.
How can I get better? So it is that kind of that 9 to 5, 5 to 9 type of mentality in terms
Yeah.
of getting better and getting an
Mm-hmm.
edge and gaining an edge. But I would say that would be the best focus of doing it, but being quite specific. So going back to what we said earlier in terms of the market trends,
Mm.
um, if you are looking for a more AI or ML type of focus role, or company in general, what type of skills is it that they're looking for people, whether it's an educational background, whether it's educational background, whether it's a research background, or whether it's a certification. So, for instance, cybersecurity is heavily certified. So, what certifications
Mm.
do I need to invest in to be able to take the next step?
Yeah.
Um, and so it's really also having an understanding of that particular industry and the nuances around that will
Mm-hmm.
set you out, and that's a skill within itself. So it's being quite intentional about upskilling, investing in yourself, investing time in yourself to be able to get better, understanding the gaps, not just in your CV, but in your skill
Skill
set
sets, yeah.
specifically,
Mm-hmm.
and being able to improve on them when you are in a role, taking as much as you possibly can from that company and that
Yeah.
business to be able to invest in your skill set so
Yeah.
that when you're moving forward, so putting your hand up to be part of a project that you might not know anything about, but you want
Yeah.
that skill set, you want to
Mm-hmm.
be part of it, so it gives you a springboard to be able to move forward. So
Yeah.
and it's kind of it's being quite you have to be quite brave to do that. So it's
Yeah.
kind of putting yourself out of your comfort zone and staying outside of your comfort zone, because that's where the growth is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and really focusing on the skills that are missing and the skills that you'd want to attain, and focusing on achieving those. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. I love, what you said about you've identified like what you want to sort of work towards, and then you're looking for ways to like build that capacity in your current role.
Yeah.
I think for me, like that, honestly, that has been like my trick for my career. And what I find is that like what you then get is you don't have to like move, okay, so like this is the next step. But because you like thought like 3 steps, ahead, you're already gathering the skill that you need to be able to then go for like those, much higher opportunities, right? And you're also
Hmm.
doing it like, yes, you're out of your comfort zone because, you're doing new things, but in a sense, like you're also in your comfort zone because you're doing it in a company that understands your boundaries and your skill sets, and they know
Hmm.
that, oh, your manager knows, oh, like this person is just trying this thing out. They're not going to judge you as harshly as if you were going to
If you
get
get
another job.
into another
Instead,
role,
they
yeah,
will find
exactly.
ways to support that growth,
Yeah.
right? And then it's
Yeah.
almost like you're giving to the company, you're doing all this great work, and then when you are leaving, like you also get that reward because you've already done the work to like get what you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
Yeah, so like we're already at 15 minutes to the end. Like this went by really really quickly, and I think we have a few questions in the question bar, so like I'll just run through
That's it.
them really quickly and we can
Cool.
we can try to answer. So the first one is, which are the easiest hands-on tech roles for someone to get to if they can't code?
If they can't, easiest hands-on tech roles if they can't code. Um, I would say support roles, especially for and that still leads back. That still like leads so quickly directly back to like 100% remote, like B2B SaaS
Yeah.
companies that have products that, or even B2C. So support roles for companies that would need like 24/7 support, global support,
Mm,
to be able to help customers with small technical solutions, but
mhm.
not like huge engineering problems, so to speak.
Yeah.
So like yeah, desktop and like first line, second line support
Yeah.
positions would probably be. And I've seen lots of like profiles where someone is now like a lead engineer and their first
It
position
was support.
was like as a
Yeah.
support role,
Yeah.
and they've just leveraged the environments that they've been to get what they need to, or they've been doing their studies to get to where they need to throughout
Yeah.
their I guess intermediary roles. But I would say
Yeah.
that's the best place to start. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. The next one is, does having a previous remote work experience ease the process of getting other remote jobs? So do you
Uh,
have to have like
yeah.
experience working remotely
No,
previously?
you don't have to, but it definitely will ease the process. I mean, it's like any experience that you have. The more experience that you have, the easier it is to kind of enter into that experience as long as the job
Mhm.
market is stable. But it's not the be all and end all
Yeah.
at all. It's about having the right aptitude and competencies to be able to go into a remote working environment.
Yeah.
So it's firstly understanding what those skill sets are, um, and then being able to being able to connect them to the type of attributes that you need to be successful. So no,
Hmm.
not necessarily. But in terms of the digital skills needed, um, the experience will come after. It's the basic competencies and digital skills that you need to be able to thrive in that. So, well written, communication asynchronously via
Yeah.
email or via Slack
Yeah.
or whichever communication tool that they're using. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's just the biggest like thing with remote working is like you have to demonstrate that you can communicate well
Yeah.
and communicate, sometimes across time zones and stuff.
Hmm.
You get the experience as you're on the job, but the main thing is demonstrating that like you can communicate clearly,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then you also have like very strong collaboration skills. So I'm sure like
Yeah.
for people who work remotely, or like for companies who are hiring remotely, they would have that would be one of the things that they're assessing for. Like in your previous roles, how have you
Yeah.
communicated, or how have you collaborated well? So have those examples at
Yeah.
at your fingertips, like when you're going into those
Yeah.
interviews.
Yeah.
Um,
And can I just say
yeah.
one thing about communicate? Communication is also, of course, like how myself and Ibukun are communicating right now, virtually, verbally, but it's also about like your environment, your space, where you are, everything else that's going on around you, how you're communicating with someone is really important. Um, so that's all part of like a remote working environment, the space that you're in also as well. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. The next question is, how can you get a remote job after being unemployed for a long
Mm.
while, but you've been upskilling yourself?
How can you get a remote job while you've been employed for a long while? Um, as long as you've been, I mean, as long as you've been upskilling yourself within that time, and you're being specific about the skills that you've been upskilling with in the jobs that you're applying for, it's just about consistency.
Mm,
Um, if we're talking about the job market right now, it's a tough job market for everyone. Um, and hopefully we're at I guess the top of the bottom curve of that now, and
yeah.
it's starting to
Yeah.
change and starting to shift. But I'd say that perseverance and consistency, and those are not words that you really want to hear when like job hunting, but as long as
It's the
you're
truth.
upskilling, it's not, but it's the truth. But if as long as you're upskilling and focusing on the skills that you're attaining within that time to be
Yeah.
focused on within the roles that you're applying for, and you can showcase the aptitude that you've had throughout this time in terms of upskilling. That's the best way to go about it. There's not, I guess,
Yeah.
a magic wand of how to get through it,
Yeah.
but also being quite purposeful with networking. So as you're upskilling,
Yeah.
showcasing what your projects and what you're upskilling with and what you're doing with hiring managers, um, and also being quite active on LinkedIn or whichever networks it is that you function on as a professional. I think that's really important within that time of a kind of not being of being unemployed or finding it difficult to find an opportunity.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I
100%.
should
Yeah.
say this as well. If you know of any great recruiters that are going to advocate for you, um, engage, build good,
Mm-hmm.
long-lasting professional relationships with recruiters that have good relationships with businesses that might be hiring.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Black Recruiters Network. Um, so feel free to follow us on LinkedIn and find any recruiters that would match and could potentially
Yeah.
help you find a role and work for you as much as you're working for yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think about basically you want to put your best foot forward, right? So that could be a
Yeah,
recruiter representing you because they have like a good idea of what your skills are. It would be working on your CV as well to really reflect the skills that you've been
for
building
sure.
in that time.
Hmm.
And then also like networking with other people, who could potentially link you up with roles.
Perfect.
And I think the next question is, how would you advise me to strategize if I want an offer that comes with relocation? I have worked remotely
Mm,
and currently on site in data analysis.
yeah. Um, if you want an offer that comes with relocation, I think that before going into a process, or if you've worked remotely before, um, either the company that you're working with can offer you a relocation package if necessary, but before
Mhm.
entering a process, you'll know if there's a relocation package available or not. And it's usually just that it's available
Or
or it's
it's
not.
not. Yeah.
So there's the only way to strategize is to apply for roles that offer relocation.
Yeah.
Some roles will not, some roles will. Larger companies, more mature companies will offer relocation packages.
Yeah.
You probably won't find, unless you'll find that in maybe a mature startup, that's around like a Series C and doing very, very well, or D. But just like mature, either privately owned companies
Mm.
that haven't taken investment, that are huge and well known,
Yeah.
or huge consultancies or big consultancies, they would probably be the most um, yeah they'll probably be them yeah they would probably be offering relocation packages rather
Yeah.
than like a small startup. Yeah, so I would
Yeah.
say just be aware of what packages are actually available before applying or going into the process, because it's not going to change after the offer, and you
Yeah.
won't be able to negotiate
Yeah.
that up.
The relocation,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. I think just keep in mind that like there are policies that govern like companies being able to relocate people. And I think
Hmm.
we also shared on our page as well, like lists of for example in the UK and in the US, companies that sponsor relocation. I think another
Perfect.
thing that people also need to pay attention to is
Hmm.
seniority. So like companies are more inclined to bring in like senior folks who, have like very unique experience that they're looking for.
Yep.
So maybe also paying attention to like the skills that you
Yeah.
have, and
Yeah.
like how far along you are in your career or how you communicate those
Yeah.
skills to companies who sponsor relocation.
Yeah.
I think that
The,
we have like the final question.
okay.
We've taken the final question. So before we go, like if there was one thing that you wanted people to sort of like walk away with from this event with,
Yeah.
yeah, what would that thing be?
Um, skills pay bills. That, that's that's what I would say. Focus on developing your skills and your seniority, from a remote working point of view to a relocation point of view. There's demand for skilled workers. There are skilled worker visas.
Mhm.
Focus on the specific gaps in in the market for talent. There are markets that are now saturated. Move away from it and go to a market that's developing, and invest in your skill sets there, and then that's the way to get in on the ground floor of an industry or of a particular skill set that's needed. But
Mhm.
yeah, really focus on your personal growth, your personal brand, skill sets required, and your network. and
Mm.
then just being consistent across all of those streams. And
Yeah.
yeah, you'll get there.
Yeah. Skills pay bills.
You'll pay bills.
That's the word for it.
Indeed,
I love it.
indeed.
I love it because there's so much distraction nowadays in terms of, oh, coming to tech, you get this six-figure salary. You
Mm,
forget that, like, skills are what earn you that
yeah,
six-figure
yeah,
salary. It's not just like showing up and then companies are like, dashing out these
definitely.
packages.
Yeah,
They're looking for skilled. And I actually never really thought about, like, the UK has the skilled worker visa. Like, it's literally in the name.
yeah, it
Like, you
does.
have to be a skilled worker to get the visa, right?
It's
So
literally in his
yeah,
name,
skills
yeah.
skills pay bills. We're not going to forget that one anytime soon.
Good,
Um,
good.
yeah, thank you so much, Ibrahim. Like, this has been a really fun
No problem,
conversation.
for sure.
It's been really, really. I'm happy that this happened. Eventually,
Hmm.
it's been a long time coming, but
Yeah.
I think hopefully, you guys have taken away a lot from the conversation that we've had, today as well. I guess before we sort of wrap up, do you want to talk about Black Recruiters Network and like where people can find you?
Yes. You can find the Black Recruiters Network on Instagram, which is the Black Recruiters Network. So you can follow our page. You can also find us on LinkedIn. Um, Also the Black Recruiters Network. And you can follow our page there to follow all of our updates. We also have a Slack channel and community. So if there's any talent professionals within that, you can join our Slack community and follow us. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Ricardo Ibrahim Thomas. And you can follow me, connect with me if you have any further questions. But yeah, that's where you can find us.
All right, thank you. And for Comtech with us, you can find us here at Comtech with us. Literally, I think Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, just search Comtech with us and you'll be able to find us.
Hmm.
And we're looking forward to connecting with, as many of you as possible. I think we also did say that we're going to give away 1 hour of like career coaching from Comtech with us as well.
Oh, wow, okay.
So thank you to everyone who has engaged so far. We'll be reaching out to, one of you to let you know who has, we'll be announcing on our stories as well who won the giveaway. But thank you so much, everyone, for joining us on like Friday evening. I know how
Hmm.
important this time is, and thank you, Ibrahim, for
No
all the
problem.
insights that you shared. We really appreciate your time, and we'll catch you guys on the streets of
No
Instagram.
problem.
Bye.